All right, here we go. It's a beautiful day on March 3rd. Spring's in the air. It's above 32 degrees, and we're ready to rock and roll. So a couple things to highlight for the group this morning. Um, one sec. There we go. Couple things to highlight for the group this morning. One is we have some important disclosures to make because the rules of engagement on something has changed. You need to pay attention to, like legit need to pay attention to. Two, I will give you the recap of part one of the vision speech, which was effectively 3 hours. I'll summarize it for you in 20 minutes of all the things you need to know and that you need to be paying attention to, and understanding of the numbers that drive our market and what is driving our current market today in the market of the moment and what will drive the market of the future as we head deeper into 2026. Sound good? Love it. First, I want to highlight something. And, our as an organization locally, from a KW perspective, is one of the things that I would say that we strive to achieve and that we desire to deliver is we want to be known as the premier brokerage offering an unparalleled experience that continues to enrich our agents and community that we serve at Keller Williams Milwaukee. We offer custom tailor experiences that empower agents to grow and achieve success while having fun. And I want to highlight someone who did something really, really cool this weekend, and I had been aware of it because there was months and months in planning. But over the weekend, Jessica Hanawi threw a Milwaukee prom for the community. And on Saturday night, raised over $9,000 for the Milwaukee Diaper Mission. And this was something that she was called to do and called to serve. And we had a ton of people within our KW community that showed up and showed out to support her. And it's a great example of how do we enrich our communities? How do we enrich the lives of those that we are around and surround ourselves with? How do we make it not only an industry event, not only a client event, but we make it a community event? And what she was able to achieve on Saturday night, I call it, and every time you do an event, from a team perspective, we talk about pre, during, post, pre, during, post, pre, during, post. And Jessica ran the playbook to a T. She paired up with actually a good friend of mine, Megan Johnson, who runs the Milwaukee Diaper Mission. They were able to leverage some PR for the event. They were able to leverage some PR through a variety of different mediums. Here's an example on, I believe, Fox 6 Real Milwaukee, where Megan got on to talk about the evening. And then from there is during the event is how do you deliver an exceptional event that really showcases and give people not only a good time, but just builds a sense of community and building a broader sense of purpose. And then the post event is like, how do you showcase what it is that we do to enrich our communities, that we enrich the lives who we work with, who we serve. And wanted to give a shout out as we start this morning because Jessica delivered on not only an exceptional event, but it's just an exceptional way to highlight how people are enriching our communities in and around southeastern Wisconsin. And shout out to Jessica and those that showed up and showed out to support her and the Milwaukee Diaper Mission on Saturday evening. All right, next up, I'm going to jump right into education and events. And first off, this week's in the Millionaire Real Estate Agent podcast. I actually think this is one of the most appropriate things that most of us need. And it's in the form of how do we drive growth-driven operations frameworks? Growth-driven operations framework. The enemy of scale is the inability to give up control. The way you give up control is you create systems so that your systems delivered an unparalleled client experience with consistency. A great episode to be leaning into in the Millionaire Real Estate Agent podcast this week in terms of how do you provide growth-driven operations for you, potentially your team, or potentially your clients. So feel free to check that out. March training calendar is out. Lots of things to highlight throughout the month of April. And you'll know, or sorry, wow, I'm already way ahead of the game. Throughout the month of March, it tells you how excited I am for the weather to change. But you can see here, March is jam-packed, a handful of things to highlight. In the month of March on Thursdays at 11 a.m., we will be running this live in innovation as well as via Google Meet, a workshop all around the tech-powered agent. How do you work smarter? How do you create digital marketing? How do you effectively be physically based in terms of the relationships you have and digitally enhanced? How do you digitally enhance and leverage technology to create efficiencies within your workspaces, your work environments? So feel free to check that out on Thursdays throughout the month of March at 11 a.m. in person and via and virtual. The ever popular KW Luxury Training Series is this week tomorrow at 10 a.m. Leverage like a leader, building systems, people, and partnership that scale luxury success. Going back off the theme of the MREA podcast, you can see very quickly as we're heading into the spring market all around systems, systems, and systems. How do you scale and how do you create scale within your businesses? Next up, I want to highlight this and I want to stay here for a second. Next Monday, March 9th at the Zufari Conference Center, we have 27 teams or vendor partners that are seeking talent. And I'll tell you, in an environment where we've effectively been operating what was the equivalent from a transactional standpoint of 2008, 2009, 2010, I'll talk more about that here in a second. If you're either stuck, you're complacent, and here's the truth, teams ultimately provide a structure for success. And so when people ask me, hey, what is it? Why should I consider a team? Should I not consider a team? The question you should be asking yourself is, does the team help me get to my end game from an income standpoint faster than I otherwise would on my own? And look, in this industry, I believe there are three types of agents. There's the individual solo flyer who should never join a team because they would just cause havoc because they should be an individual flyer. And that's good. That's healthy. That's why a lot of people got in this business. They wanted autonomy. There are people that, quite frankly, are incredible leaders who should be helping transform and change the lives of others by helping them be more productive tomorrow than they were today. And there is a reason why they run teams. And then the third agent is the agent who knows generally what they want to do. They want a stronger sense of structure and accountability. And so they might best be fit on a team so that they are enhanced by the leadership of someone who is helping transform people's lives. And if you want to understand what that looks like, you're thinking about building a team, you want to understand what value propositions are of why teams, feel free to join us on March 9th at the Zufari Conference Center from 3 to 5 p.m. next week. All right, next week on March 11th at 11 a.m. in the Innovation Office, Mandy Grimal from Grimal & Associates, one of the hot topics within our industry right now, if you aren't paying attention to it, is insurance. Florida right now, listings are up nearly 70%. Why? Because of insurance. You need to understand the insurance landscape, and Mandy and her team will be here at the Innovation Office on March 11th at 11 a.m. You need to understand insurance. More to come on that as we get deeper into the year. Next up, also on March 11th, on Wednesday, March 11th at 11 a.m., Jenny Klug will be doing a virtual presentation around the listing edge of turning warranties into leverage. How do you create it a part of your value proposition? So feel free to join Jenny via Zoom next week, Wednesday, the 11th at 11 a.m. And then next up throughout the month of March, here is the PC coaching calendar on Thursdays at 9 a.m. Competitive offers. Win the AO, which was last week. There's a field trip this week for those in the PC program. Look out for your details on that. Fine tune your CMA, the listing presentations, and then special guests on the 30th. All right, Court, there's new marketing assets. What do these guys need to be paying attention to?
Yeah, hi everybody. And Charlie, while I'm the first person off mute, your full screen is not showing. I don't know if you want to exit out and do it. I can fly here without a slide, but in the marketing concierge, we have added some new assets. So we have added a few more of the 12 direct campaigns. Once Charlie gets that screen back up, they will be listed. But for now, we have the brewer schedule, which is updated for their upcoming season, which will be here before we know it. We have local garden and flower shops that are available. We have dog parks and hiking trails. So all of those are live and ready to be used right now. We will be working on spring cleaning. That one is almost done. So probably by next week, that'll be up and running. And then once farmers market schedules start coming out, we will also have that added. So lots of new good direct mail as the weather gets warm. It's a great thing to start sending to your clients so that they can get out and about and kind of have a piece of leverage that has your face and information on it that they could keep on their fridge. We are always open to other ways of formatting this. If you're looking to do something different than a 12 direct campaign, maybe a fridge magnet or something of the sort, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're more than happy to change those formats a bit so that it fits whatever your need is. The next slide is just a quick reminder. of how to access the marketing concierge. So you can do it simply on your computer by going to kwmkrealty.com. And then in the upper right-hand corner, there's that agent tab and clicking marketing concierge. If you're on your phone, you're going to go to the KW MKE app. So wherever you have that stored, select that and open it up. In the bottom right, there's going to be that resources button. And then at the top, there's a bunch of good information. But if you're looking for the marketing concierge, select marketing. There's that link. And then you're on the same exact website you'd be on if you were on your computer. So if you don't have that app yet downloaded, that would be great to put on your phone for things like this when you're on the go and you think of something, you scroll through, select whatever you're looking for, and then start typing in your information.
If you haven't noticed yet, your phone is the remote control of your life. And our goal is to be able to deliver everything you need at the palm of your hand, including your ability to get a hold of us or ordering your marketing concierge pieces or assets. So feel free to utilize. Court, thank you. All right, I'm going to jump in. Last week, Thursday, around 11 a.m., I sent an all-company email, which I don't do often. I understand that everybody gets a lot of emails, and so I try and only send things that I think or believe to be important that you should be paying attention to. More so as a full disclosure in terms of when you get something from me, I would appreciate if you take a look because I don't send things often. But more so on that note, I shared with the group an op-ed that Gary Keller wrote. And I was a part of a group of around 8 of us across the country that worked with Gary Keller and Jason Abrams to pen this, all around the rules of engagement currently within our marketplace. And I've been talking about this, if you've been with us for a little while, for the last 12 to 18 months, all around seller disclosures. How do we provide access to information so that sellers are understanding of the rules of engagement of our industry? Quite frankly, the rules of engagement have been changing and they are ever changing. And yet there are some things happening in the background that I don't believe are in the best choice of the consumers, because consumers come to you and they take your voice at face value. You know how I know this? 92% of the time, sellers only interview 1 or 2 people. 75% of the time, they only interview 1 person. So they're taking what real estate professionals tell them as fact. And the challenge of it is because they're taking your voice as the voice of reason within helping them navigate their largest financial transaction of their life, that they only do on average 3 to 4 times across their lifetime. And it's very complex and it's legal documents. Sometimes the advice that is provided is, or sometimes commentary that is being provided is masquerading as advice. Okay, there's a lot to read into that. And so we worked with Gary and Jason to create an op-ed that launched last week Thursday, as an op-ed around our stance as a Keller Williams organization, and one that I personally am aligned to and believe in, around our position as it relates to seller disclosures. Hopefully you took the time to read it. I thought it was an incredibly well-written op-ed, and we're going to continue to push from a PR standpoint, our position, our stance. In southeastern Wisconsin, I will tell you the reason why we're taking a very heavy approach to this in terms of our communication. My apologies. Here's what I'd tell you. We sell 1 of every 4 homes in southeastern Wisconsin. And so we have to take an industry-leading stance as it relates to that. Look, here's the deal. I'm going to go into this slideshow. For those on the Zoom, I will send it to you immediately after. But here's the 3-point summary of the op-ed. Sellers should have the right to choose how their home is marketed. Okay? The sellers should have the right to choose. The stance is we are not taking a stance as it relates to there is not a reason for excluded. There is a reason for excluded. But sellers need to understand the rules of engagement. Okay, there needs to be enhanced disclosures to all options for more informed seller choice. In the state of Wisconsin, for someone to enter into the excluded status, they have to sign or initial 7 times before they enter into excluded. Within the op-ed, we specifically cited Wisconsin Act 69 because we are the first state in the entire United States that has taken legislation to enhance seller disclosure as it relates to their options of coming to market. You saw that within the article. The concern that we address within the op-ed is that sales pitches are masquerading as disclosures where potential upsides are trumpeted and potential downsides are whispered or ignored. That is not transparency. That is marketing dressed up as advice. And the third point I would tell you as it relates to the op-ed is strong markets are built on trust, and trust is built on truth. And so we're leading this op-ed as it relates to industry standards from a disclosure standpoint. And the best news is, I will tell you, and I made this point within the email that I sent out to the group. Tom Larson, who is the CEO of the Wisconsin Realtors Association, and Corey Lamont, who is the VP of Governmental Affairs, are two of the best leaders in the industry. And they have been very forthright in thinking and being proactive in terms of our state's approach around legislation around this issue, which is what you've seen. This is a much bigger national issue because not all states operate like the state of Wisconsin in terms of uniform contract and uniform rules. But we're in a very good environment, and we're going to continue to push the narrative around why disclosure is appropriate so that sellers have an informed understanding of to their choice as to how they might come to market with their inventory. Make sense? Cool. With that, then, I also shared with you an incredible Housing Wire article that better goes into detail the groundbreaking legislation that Wisconsin passed that could reshape transparency in real estate. It goes into effect January 1st of 2027 that basically standardizes disclosures across the state and removes the policing or enforcement from an MLS standpoint, because we know in the state of Wisconsin with 13 MLSs, you could have 13 different understandings of the rules of engagement to this. And so the state said, we're just going to give one clear directive as it relates to this. So I shared with you the housing article that helps you understand a bit more around the groundbreaking legislation. With that, though, there is some understandings you need to do because you need to have as it relates to excludeds, because the rules of engagement on excludeds have changed. Here is my personal opinion as to why this is, and then Steph will be coming on to explain it. The truth of the matter is I think the MLS is deathly afraid of antitrust lawsuit. And so when they used to be very heavy-handed in terms of their enforcement and policy or policing of these rules, they have since taken a step back. The unfortunate thing, and I shared my feedback to the MLS as it relates to this, is no one communicated when they decided to take a step back. And so the rules of engagement lack clarity, which I think creates chaos. And we need to operate in an environment where we have clarity so that we mitigate risk and we are doing right not only by our clients and our consumers, but we are doing right by our peers, because this industry is built on peer-to-peer trust and peer-to-peer relationships, because you're negotiating with a buyer's agent or you're negotiating with a listing agent. So with that, the rules of engagement around excludeds have changed slightly, and I believe it could help, it could hurt. I think the time will tell, but Steph helped these guys understand around the rules of engagement for excludeds.
Yes, awesome. Thank you. Sincerely, nothing gives me more pleasure than to be able to update you guys with this. Feel like I've been the one who's been the most downtrodden on our rules. So, okay. So major updates in terms of how we can advertise these MLS excluded. So if you guys recall, the rule of thumb before was only verbal communication could be had and nothing in writing. That has been updated, so we can share written one-to-one communication, either via text or email. We can share the address, again, one-to-one communication. And we can share in our private Facebook groups. Again, we used to really be on you guys about not doing this, so I'm really, really happy about this. Pics are allowed to be shared. Second rule of thumb here is that it cannot be for mass consumption. So no email blasts about it via Command or MailChimp or whatever platform you're using for that. So, and then third, it cannot be publicly searchable. So that's kind of the third rule of thumb with this. We cannot trace it back to a public link or a public source. So again, this is huge for us in terms of how we can communicate our excluded listings, and the compliance team is just over the moon about this, I think. So any questions, please reach out.
Steph, I will share one other thing because this is an evolving situation that we learned about last week, Friday. There's a Metro MLS board meeting on March 12th where the number one agenda item on this as it relates to clear cooperation and the rules of engagement around excludeds. more to come on this, but these are the rules of engagement as we understand them today and have confirmed from Metro MLS. But there is a board meeting on March 12th that I'm very much paying attention to. So making you guys aware that this is evolving. This is an evolving situation as it relates to this. But here's what I would tell you. You can share addresses one-to-one. You can share pictures one-to-one. It can be one-to-one text. It can be one-to-one email. As long as it's not publicly searchable or it gets tied back to you canvassing the market to 500 people in terms of how you communicated this, you should be in better shape in terms of your ability to help your peers understand as to the excluded inventory that you might be holding.
Okay, it's great news. All right, next up. So this is from the contract review team. So just a reminder in terms of signature setup for LLCs and trusts. So the LLC must sign documents by either a member or a manager. Again, the signature block should provide the name of the LLC and also allow for the person to sign their own name in the proper capacity. So we've got an example here. So John Smith, comma, managing member of Buy Homes LLC. So please make sure you're setting up the signature blocks to reflect both the LLC name and the managing member. And then likewise with trusts, we do need to have the trustee, their formal name, and then the name of the trust in the signature block as well. Okay. Then next, the new delayed form. This was a surprise to us. The MLS updated their delayed form back in January. They had already done an update in the fall, but I don't know what exactly was updated here, but January 14th is when it went into effect. It is already updated in zip forms in our packets and in the forms library. But just make sure you're using this. And you can see the date in the top right-hand corner. So just make sure your files are updated when you're loading this into MLS. Then just a couple more updates. The MLS Connect. So Kimmy's gonna send an email no later than 10:30 this morning. So just right after the meeting, look for the email. But we're gonna give you guys directions on how to reconnect to MLS. We have to do this every year. Just to establish that, again, connection between zip forms, MLS, so that we can auto-populate that information when we're drafting offers. So, all right, I think one more thing. Oh yeah, okay. The hotline, again, we just really need to encourage you guys to be using the hotline for your compliance and contract needs. One thing that did not dawn on me is that you guys didn't realize that you could text this number. So please make sure that we're loading this into our contacts, 414-368-9359. That's all I got.
Sweet. Thanks, Lieutenant.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to jump into the vision speech. And before I do that, I'm going to see if I can cut a few things out of here. One sec. Boom. All right. Ready. Sorry. Boom. All right, here we go. I'm going into the vision speech. Last week, we had roughly 60 people who attended Family Reunion. One of the great things of Family Reunion is Gary and his team of economists go through a vision speech to help you understand what are they seeing within the marketplace, what are they feeling about where the industry is headed, and what do you need to be paying attention to in order to communicate most effectively to your clients. Here's the truth. If your clients are only getting their headlines around or related to our industry in social media or the news outlets, you have lost the reasoning to be the economist of choice for those that call you for your services. You have to understand the rules of engagement around this information so that you can be viewed as the economist of choice to their largest financial asset on their balance sheet. Okay. General commentary from stage. And by the way, anything in yellow is my commentary that I reviewed and provide to you. I will provide you the entire presentation for you to be able to digest it. And I would highly encourage you to be able to digest it. The yellow is my commentary. Our jobs are to bring perspective and knowledge to our clients. If you don't have perspective, you miss an opportunity to articulate your knowledge. We have to be the voice of reason and truth for our communities. Don't allow people to buy headlines. You must do the activities that cause that to happen. Otherwise, your business will look like the market. You have to do the activities that make business happen. Otherwise, your business will look like the market. Okay. So let's get into it. The numbers that drive the U.S. residential real estate market. We're going to look at home sales, home prices, total market volume, inventory, mortgage rates, and affordability to start. Okay. First, home sales on an annual basis. Here's what you need to know and understand. Couple things to point out. Okay. Is when you look back from 2005 down to 08, you saw the slide. And then the slide lasted for effectively about 4 years, from 4.1, 4.3, 4.2, 4.3 million transactional units. Okay. And then we had a run from 2012 to effectively 2022 where the tide continued to rise. Okay. And we went from 4.3 in 2011 to 4.7 in 2012. And then we peaked in 2021 at 6.1 million. And then we slid a little bit down to 5 million. And then you can see where we were from 23 to 25 for the last 3 years. Okay. The last 3 years, know this. No market has ever been roughly around 4.1 million transactional units for more than 4 years. So as we talk about the cyclical nature of tides that rise and tides that remain suppressed, no market has ever stayed longer than 4 years. Point being, when you look ahead at the next 5 years to 10 years, and I've said this many, many times before, I'm very bullish about the tide continuing to rise. A variety of reasons, one being demographics, which I've shared with you before, but also two, history as it relates to data has a tendency to repeat itself. And when you look at this data going back 75 years, no market has ever stayed suppressed longer than 4 years. We are now in that window now where you'll start to see the tide rise. Okay. The other thing to note is 2025, there were 4.1 million transactional units, effectively the exact same market we've been operating in. The purple dotted line on this screen shows you going back to 1990, where in which the market we have operated in, effectively going back over the last 45 years, 46 years. Okay. So you can see for the most part, 90% of the markets have been above 4.1 million in transactional units. Okay. And so if you look ahead, their projections are 4.3 million transactional units, which is roughly a 5% transactional unit increase versus 2025. Now, what's interesting is Lawrence Yun, the National Association of Realtors economist, who was in Milwaukee 2 weeks ago on a Friday morning, was predicting a 14% increase. I think that's rather aggressive. And if it does, we'll be jumping for joy. I think 5% is a far more realistic bump in terms of where that is. Here's the challenge, okay, which I'll come up to in a second. So what you need to know is 33% of the units disappeared in 2 years. The floor was defined by who had to move. We did not get progressively better in 2025, okay? 1 or 2 more years before we progressively look back and say, geez, that was tough. 23 to 25 was the worst 3-year stretch of transactional units in the last 30 years. The good news is it's never been worse, and the bottom is never zero because people have life events and they will continue to need to move. Now, here is one thing I want to point out, and this is somewhat of a convoluted graph that makes it difficult to understand, but this is monthly seasonally adjusted forecasted units looking ahead. Here's the challenge. January was tough. Based on seasonally adjusted forecast, we would predict that we would have about 3.9 million units sold in 2026, which means the tide would recede. My point to sharing you in this perspective is January was tough. A variety of reasons for it I won't get into here, but just know this. Expect the industry to accelerate this spring. The rate environment, I believe, is going to continue to improve for a variety of macroeconomic and geopolitical reasons. And because of a rate environment that will continue to improve, they will use the housing industry in order to drive GDP across the US in 2026. My point to it is buckle your seatbelts because I would expect the spring and summer to be busier than normal to offset what we lost in January and February. Okay? Now, Home prices on an annual basis, lots of things to unpack here, and I'll start by this. The long-term trend line, okay, is what you see in light blue, okay? Over the last 75 years in our industry, the housing market has appreciated on average at a 4% rate. Some years are above it, some years are below it. You can see what happened in the cliff of '08, and then how long it took to get back above the industry trend line of 4% appreciation. Now, a lot of you might be thinking, and your clients might be asking because of recency bias, well, what happens or why did that happen in 2008? Okay. And here's what I point out. In 2006, homes were priced 21% above the 4% historical trend line as it relates to appreciation, 21%. Currently today, we're only 7%. So from a risk standpoint and people wondering if they're buying at the top of the market, there is not as much of a propensity from a risk standpoint that we saw in '06 in terms of overvalued assets. Okay. So a couple things to point out. Everyone has poor perspective on pricing. We are only 7% above the 4% trend line from an appreciation standpoint. Okay. Here's the truth. Prices, since going back to inception of when they started tracking this data 75 years ago, prices 2x on homes every 10 years, which is actually much shorter than you might expect. So if, let's say, a $300,000 home in 10 years will go to $600,000. A $600,000 home in 10 years will go to 1.2 million. Every 10 years, homes have a tendency to double. So what happens is during moments of swings is appreciation may slow, but over time it only goes up. Okay? If we communicate this more effectively as an industry, you'd have more people who would take action. You might be buying at the top of the moment, but never at the top of the market. All markets have a tendency to correct themselves on average every 7 years. Okay? So don't wait to buy real estate and wait. More commentary there as it relates to first-time home buyers. Here's what I would press upon you. If we communicated this more effectively as an industry, you would have more people taking action sooner within their lives and more consistently within their lives as it relates to where they're putting capital correlated to their real estate. You will see more of that later in this presentation around the world's wealthy and where wealthy are putting their distribution of assets. Okay, more to come. Now, total market volume, interesting thing here to point out. Total market volume, a couple things. One, the 2020 volume line is the purple line that you can see here across the dot. This is on a per agent basis. What's super interesting is when you look at it, going back to 2006, we had 1.3 million realtors in the market across the US. And from 2007 to 2008, we lost 150,000 real estate professionals in the industry. What's interesting about this is this. When you look ahead there in 2025, there were 1.5 million real estate professionals in 2025. Okay. We did not see the attrition rate that we saw during the last reset cycle because the cost and appreciation on the volume per transaction was so substantially higher, people could still make a significant income with doing fewer units. And so we didn't see the attrition in the industry. Now, where this comes into play and where this impacts you is this. Okay. It's the tale of two markets. When you look at it in 2025, we were the third best dollar volume per agent in the industry, in the history of the industry. We didn't see a mass exodus of agents because of this. And yet it was the third most competitive market as it relates to closed units per agent. So again, when I've been challenging you that agents have been getting drunk on volume, you need to be focusing on your units. And there is a piece of commentary that I will share with you that if you feel like the industry has gotten harder, it's because it has. A lot of professionals didn't leave the industry, and yet the transactional volume dropped by 33%. And you have the same amount of people chasing after 33% fewer deals. The industry has gotten more competitive. It goes back to the original comment I made on slide 1, which is you cannot rely on just being a real estate professional hoping the phone to ring. You have to do things to make the phone ring. How you communicate with intensity and frequency, how you communicate your value, so on and so forth. So if you feel like you've been working hard, you have. It's a highly competitive space. We didn't see the attrition during the most recent reset. Okay. Inventory on an annual basis. This is going back to 1983. You can see here a balanced market, which, by the way, nothing is ever in balance, but they say a buyer's market is anything above 6 months in inventory. A seller's market is anything below 6 months of inventory. Okay. What we're coming out of in 2021, we had never seen a months of supply inventory at 2.2 months of supply. It was unheard of. We are crawling out of a historically low inventory, and a lot of that set is because of lack of new construction inventory during what we call the lost decade, where we lost 3 million new housing starts because of the collapse of '08. And we then had this massive boom from a demographic standpoint where more people were getting into the housing industry, but we didn't get 3 million incremental new units that would have served the demographics of those that were coming into it. So inventories have never been so low in the history of our industry. It's a slow climb out, yet we need it to climb. This goes to some of the commentary I made a few months ago as it relates to days on market, so on and so forth. Some of these metrics were unhealthy for a long time, and it's okay. It's our job to bring perspective to our clients who are freaking out that their home didn't sell on Friday morning after going live on a Thursday night. That's not healthy, okay? Demographics are in our favor for long-term related to demand, and the issue with supply has been this. People are aging in place longer. Modern medicine has helped people stay in their homes, and people are sitting on low interest rates with tons of equity, and they're looking for certainty, and they know the housing market is going up, so they're sitting on their inventory. Okay? The lack of inventory plus low rates has locked a market which continued to create appreciation. Now, mortgage rates on an annual basis. Again, your job is to provide perspective in order to educate your clients. We hear this all the time, okay? The historical average since 1972 to 2023, the historical average interest rate from a mortgage perspective was 7.7%. When you look at the historical average going from 1990 to 2023, the historical average is 6%, okay? What you now know is that 2026, they're projecting mortgage rates to hover around 5.9%. Last year, as an entire annualized basis, they were at 6.6%. Okay. Now, interestingly enough, this presentation was delivered last week, Monday morning. Guess what happened since Monday morning? Rates went down. I looked at the FRED, the 30-year fixed mortgage average across the United States on Thursday, February 26th. Mortgage rates were now at 5.98%, the lowest they have been in over 3 years. Hence my commentary of January might have been tough, February might have been tough for a lot of you, and why I believe that the market will be heating up because they're going to use the housing industry as a lever to pull on the economy. Okay? Now, here's another interesting factoid for you. When you look at the housing stock across the US, 48.5% of mortgages have rates at 4% or higher. 4% or higher. The opportunity in the market is this. A third of the overall market has an insignificant difference of what they have versus what they may get if they transacted. Okay? So as we unlock this, the percentage of that market will grow. Let me help define that to you in layman's terms. A third of the overall market, there would be no meaningful difference if they decide to sell today based on the rates they have and what they might potentially buy into because they are in a rate where the rate environment now has normalized and as we've unlocked a lot of this inventory that was sitting below 4%. I'm just going to say it, half the market is above 4% now. That's healthy for us. That trend will continue as we continue to play the game. And so we have to help our clients understand the math because the math always works. Okay, looking at appreciation rates, looking at historical perspective as it relates to rates. I'll get into a bit here more in a second as it relates to affordability. Here's the segue. Okay, this is percent of principal and interest that homeowners across the US are paying and the trend line going back to 1972. You can see as things go up and you can see as things go down. The historical average from 1972 to 2023 is 27% of a household's income typically goes to principal and interest. Okay. The challenge of it is from 2000 to 2024, a 24-year period, we trained consumers that nearly 20% of their income should go to principal and interest, yet it isn't the historical norm. And so the problem is when we saw the spike in 2025 that roughly a third of households' principal, a household's income was going towards their principal and interest, you had people freaking out, right? As it relates to affordability. Here's the truth. We have a decade of consumers who have normalized underpaying as it relates to principal and interest as a percent of their income. A decade of consumers. So we are back to near normal. Still a bit more expensive due to the rate hikes of those consumers who are sitting 6, 7, some at 8%. We are back to near normal. We exist to provide perspective. The rate environment plus depreciation was the cause. We have to help people understand that the expectation from a principal and interest standpoint is 27% is a real effective baseline. We're not far off that. And we will continue to see that come down heading into 2026 as rates are also coming down. Okay. Again, we're dealing with recency bias as it relates to consumers who underpaid as a percentage overall towards their principal and interest. Okay. Now, next part of this is the US economy. What's driving it? And here's what I'd like to remind you. Things that actually matter in real estate. This is really simplistic. The price of real estate, the cost of money, and employment. What I'm going into next is effectively employment. All the things that drive our economy drive employment because people need to be gainfully employed in order to afford to buy real estate, buy or sell real estate. GDP on an annual basis last year was at 2.2%. Okay. Really healthy, really solid. The Fed's goal is to help people keep employed without money getting out of whack with normal growth. Okay. The challenge of it is some of the employment numbers we're seeing and the AI economy and how that's impacting where the labor economy is allocating resources to employment. That's the concern. Unemployment is risen over the last 3 years from 3.6 to 4.2% last year in 2025, which, by the way, 4% is a gainfully employed economy. The truth of the matter is we have a gainfully employed economy. The questioning part of it is we need industry to create more jobs to maintain a 4% level of unemployment. And I don't like trends that are going from 3.6 to 4.0 to 4.2 because it's trending in the wrong direction. That's the softness that could create some risk for us as it relates to our economy because people need to be employed to buy homes and people are staying unemployed longer. Now, what's interesting about this, and I pulled this back into it, is appreciation and unemployment are counterbalances. Okay. As unemployment goes down, appreciation goes up. And as appreciation goes down, unemployment goes up. Okay. So I'm going to flip back and forth really quickly. What do you notice? It's an inverse relationship. So as unemployment continues to spike, we might see potentially some slowing of appreciation. A factor we'll be paying attention to as the economic numbers are coming forward into 2026. But again, I'm going to go back to when unemployment is down, appreciation is up. Why? Because the economy is gainfully employed. And when economy starts to spike, you'll see a leveling off or slight, maybe slight depreciation from a housing inventory standpoint. So something I'm paying attention to. Here's the concern as it relates to unemployment. Right now, there's 1 million more unemployed than job openings in the US. Job openings are in orange. The blue is unemployment people in the millions over the US. And I highlighted this to show you right now there's 1 million more people in the US unemployed than jobs that are currently open and available. Something we'll be paying attention to as job reports and things come out. Again, another reason why I believe this current administration pulling the lever on mortgage rates and dropping those is a way to stimulate the economy because I think AI has disrupted some traditional industries and sectors because we're starting now to see job growth slow and we need people to be gainfully employed. Something that was shared as it relates to change in employment by industry, the 10-year average is the purple number you see. The growing sectors are healthcare, no surprise, as we have an aging economy. Leisure and hospitality, other services and financial services are all growing. The challenge of it is sectors that traditionally drove our job growth environment, construction, information, manufacturing, professional and business services, government, trade, transportation, and utilities. The purple is the 10-year average in terms of where job growth were, and you can see in those industries last year where job growth sought. Effectively, the three of the top five historical 10-year averages of where we get job growth from declined in 2025, a concerning trend. Wealth and income. Here, this is a breakdown between the top 1%, the next 9%, the next 40%, and the bottom 50%. Important to understand this for this reason, okay? The top 1% across the US right now is those that make more than $750,000 on an annualized basis, okay? Residential real estate, if you look across all of these percentiles in the last 10 years are up, okay? Real estate is driving the trend line. Why? Because look at the appreciation gains we've had in the last 10 years. The appreciation of homes is what's driving net worth growth across all percentiles. And something to note, the world's wealthy are always in the market. They don't buy headlines or fear. They buy real estate. Why? Because it is a stable asset, and they know that real estate is a game of long-term appreciation, not short-term flash-in-the-pan gains. Okay? Now, another interesting thing is this is wealth and income by generation adjusted for inflation. Okay? This is an average person at the age of 30, their balance sheet by generation. We looked at baby boomers, Gen X, and millennials. What's interesting about this is this. When you look at their average net worth and their median net worth, today's generation is better off than those before them. So it's a bit perplexing why people are delaying their decision to buy. If they don't start to engage in the act of buying real estate, their ability to build their net worth, the gap in their ability to build their net worth will continue to grow. We have to help people understand this as it relates to helping engage them, because the average age of a first-time homebuyer being 40 in 2025 is not healthy in our industry. So we have to help people get into the game early and then help them understand over time how they can effectively trade the equity into where it is that they want to go to help them build their net worth. The reason why net worth across all those percentiles is growing is all driven by real estate in the last 10 years. Inflation, I left this in more so as a way to help you guys understand inflation has been down. It's relatively, I would say, under control, but yet there is some uncertainty from a policy standpoint related to tariffs. But for the most part, this was a hot button topic over 2 or 3 years ago, not as much of a hot button topic. The challenge becomes consumer sentiment is low. And as it relates to consumer sentiment, is it a good time to buy a home? Is really, really low. And a lot of it is because, as I've challenged you a few weeks ago in January, and the reason why I believe that the average age of a first-time homebuyer being 40 and why they're being challenged to access it is they don't know what it takes to access it. And it's our job to be able to provide that perspective in order to create action. So economic risks in 2025, again, remember, these are the things that really matter in real estate. The price of real estate, the cost of money, and employment. We have policy volatility. Obviously, you guys are paying attention to the headlines. There's a lot of volatility within the current administration, lots of things going on. People like predictability. Predictability creates certainty, which creates action. We do have a weakening labor market, something to be paying attention to. How do we stimulate the economy for job growth? AI market correction. There's a belief that the AI industry is way overvalued at the current time in terms of the delivering of value and where people are placing capital within the markets. Inflation, it's more so derivative of tariffs and some of those things. And then geopolitical conflict. You don't know where and what's going to happen next, but geopolitical conflicts are real right now. And that will have an impact on capital markets. And when it impacts capital markets, guess what? It'll impact our industry because our industry is very much commoditized based on where rates are. So there was a 3-hour presentation summarized in 25 minutes for you. Look, I try and give you the speaking points or nuggets that you should be thinking about. How do you communicate it at the grocery store? How do you communicate it at Quick Trip? And I will send you this entire presentation so that you have the Cliff Notes version in terms of, I don't know if it's the right time to buy. Okay, let's talk about how do you build your net worth. Your net worth right now at your age is built on real estate. Okay, I don't want to buy at the top of the market. You're not buying at the top of the market. You're buying at the top of the moment. We know that markets always rise. Some of these things and some of those talking points is what you'll get from me in the yellow boxes and yellow commentary, hopefully as a way to stimulate conversation so that your clients view you as the economist of choice and they're not getting their information from anybody else. Sound good? With that, guys, it's a beautiful day in Milwaukee on March 3rd. You guys are the best. We're going to freaking kick it. And we're here to serve. So anything you guys need, let us know. And thanks for showing up. Thanks, guys.